He was everything I wasn't, disciplined, stoic, built like a wall no one could climb. Detective Marcus Hale, 38 years old, the most respected cop in the city. And me? I was just the journalist who wouldn't stop asking questions. It started with a murder case, a story I thought would make my career. But what I didn't know that night, when I first saw him standing under the streetlight in his leather jacket, was that I was about to ruin his. He told me, "Cops don't fall in love with men like you," but every time our eyes met, I saw the truth fighting behind his silence, because love doesn't care about uniforms, or rules or fear. And one night, when the line between duty and desire finally broke, so did he. Stay until the very end of this story, because sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought in the streets, but inside the heart, if you believe love can break even the strongest walls. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. A new story begins now. The night I met Detective Marcus Hale, the city was bleeding light through the rain. Red and blue strobes flickered across the cracked asphalt, and the air smelled like copper and cigarettes. It was the kind of night journalists like me live for, a front-row seat to tragedy, wrapped in police tape. I was there on assignment, covering a late-night homicide in the industrial district. Another nameless victim, another story that would fill a few columns before people forgot. But the moment I stepped under the tape, I realized this one would stay with me. He was standing near the body, tall, broad-shouldered, black leather jacket soaked from the rain, eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. He didn't move when I approached, didn't even flinch when I raised my voice. "Detective Hale." I called out. He turned slowly, and for a split second I forgot how to speak. His gaze hit like gravity, sharp, assessing, the kind that strips you bare before you can form a thought. He had a face carved by years of restraint, jaw tight, eyes grey and unreadable. "I didn't authorize press access," he said. His voice was deep even, steady as a gun barrel. "I'm not press," I replied. "I'm me, Ryan Keller, freelance investigative journalist." "That's still press. I have a right to be here." He walked closer, boots echoing against the wet pavement. "Not at my crime scene, you don't." He stopped right in front of me. The rain dripped down his cheek, tracing the scar along his jaw. I could smell the faint mix of leather, rain, and aftershave, the kind of scent that lingers longer than it should. "You always this charming?" I asked. He almost smiled. Almost. "Only when I'm trying not to arrest someone." I didn't back away. Something about him, the calm authority, the quiet fire in his eyes, made me curious. Not just professionally, but in a way I didn't want to name. "Look," I said, "I'm not here to get in your way. I'm following a lead." He crossed his arms. "What lead?" "Maybe the same one you are." He tilted his head, eyes narrowing slightly. "You've got 5 seconds to convince me you're not just another vulture." I held his stare. "I'm not chasing death, detective. I'm chasing truth." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The rain softened. Somewhere behind us, a radio crackled. Then finally he said, "You've got a lot of nerve." "And you've got a lot of secrets," I said quietly. Something flickered in his eyes. Not anger, but recognition. He turned away, muttering, "Get out of here, Keller." But I didn't. Over the next few weeks, the case became a storm that refused to pass. A series of unsolved killings, all men, all found near the same stretch of river. The department was desperate. The city was scared, and Marcus Hale was unraveling. Every time I saw him, at crime scenes, in the precinct hallway, outside coffee shops where he pretended not to see me, he looked a little more tired, a little less like the man the badge wanted him to be. One night, I found him sitting alone at a diner off 5th Street, staring into a cup of black coffee like it held the answer to everything. I walked in, ignoring the part of me that said this was a bad idea. "Mind if I join you?" I asked. He sighed, not looking up. "You really don't know how to take a hint, do you?" "I'm a journalist," I said, sliding into the booth. "We're professionally annoying." He glanced up then, eyes meeting mine. "You're playing a dangerous game, covering crime or talking to you." He didn't answer, but his silence was telling. "You know," I said, "you could try smiling once in a while." Might make witnesses less terrified, his mouth twitched. I don't do smiles. No kidding. The waitress came by with refills. He nodded politely, then leaned back, studying me. Why this case, Keller? You've covered political scandals, corporate fraud. Why get your hands dirty here? I hesitated, because it's not about headlines. It's about people. And I think you know more than you're letting on. He stared at me for a long moment. Then quietly, you don't know what you're asking. Then tell me. He looked down, tracing a finger along the rim of his coffee mug. You wouldn't understand. Try me. Finally, he exhaled. I used to know one of the victims. A long time ago. That stopped me. You knew him? He nodded. We served together in the army. He was a good man. And now he's just a case file. He looked up sharply. Don't do that. Do what? Turn him into something to write about. He was real, I swallowed. I'm sorry. He sighed, running a hand over his face. You're not wrong, though. That's the problem with this job. Everything becomes evidence. Even people. There was a pause, long enough for the air to change between us. The tough cop facade cracked just slightly, revealing something human underneath. I said softly, you don't have to carry all of it alone. He looked at me then. Really looked. Cops don't fall in love with men like you, Keller. My chest tightened. What's that supposed to mean? He leaned in slightly, voice low. It means you're the kind of man who asks too many questions, who sees too much. The kind that reminds people like me what we've spent years trying to forget. For a second, the diner felt too small. Too quiet, I said, barely above a whisper. And what if I don't want to forget? He froze, his hand clenched around the mug. I could see the war in his eyes, duty versus desire, fear versus need. He stood abruptly, tossing some bills onto the table. You should go home, Keller. Some stories aren't meant to be told. As he walked past, his hand brushed against my shoulder, deliberate but fleeting, enough to leave a spark where there shouldn't have been one. I turned to watch him leave, the bell above the door chiming softly as he disappeared into the rain. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was something far more dangerous. 2 weeks passed, and I told myself I was done with Marcus Hale, done chasing the case. Done chasing the man who never smiled and yet somehow lived rent-free in my head. But obsession is a journalist's curse. And love. I was beginning to learn isn't much different. I kept digging into the story, the pattern of murders, the missing evidence, the victims' connections to one another. Every lead led back to one thing: corruption within the police force. Someone on the inside was burying the truth. And Marcus was caught in the middle of it. The more I learned, the more I saw his name pop up, on reports, on internal memos, on statements that had been lost. He wasn't just part of the story anymore. He was the story. So I did what any reckless journalist or fool in love would do. I went to find him. It was close to midnight when I reached his precinct. The city hummed with neon and exhaustion. Through the glass doors, I could see him sitting alone in his office, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, face lit by the dim glow of his desk lamp. He looked different out of uniform. Not softer, but more real. Less detective, more man. I knocked on the doorframe. You always work this late? He looked up sharply. For a moment he said nothing. Then, you shouldn't be here. That's becoming your favorite line. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. And yet you keep ignoring it. I have a talent for bad decisions. His eyes flicked to the folder in my hands. What's that? Proof, I said, stepping closer. Or maybe trouble. Depends on how honest you're feeling tonight. He stood slow and deliberate. You really don't know when to quit, do you? I'll quit when you stop hiding. Our eyes met. His steady, mine stubborn. The tension was thick enough to choke on. He sighed, closing the blinds with one quick motion. Fine, you have 5 minutes, talk. I dropped the folder on his desk. 3 victims, all former officers, all connected to a task force you worked on 6 years ago. He stared at the photos, his jaw tightening. You don't know what you're playing with, Keller. Then tell me. He looked up, and for the first time I saw it. Fear. The kind that doesn't come from danger, but from memory. They weren't just cops, he said finally. They were part of something bigger. Something that went bad. We covered it up to protect people who didn't deserve it. And now, someone's cleaning house. Someone inside the department. He hesitated. Maybe. And you're next. His eyes flickered. Maybe. The room went quiet. The only sound was the soft hum of the streetlights outside. I said quietly, "Then let me help you." He laughed. Short. Bitter. "You're a reporter, Keller. You don't help people like me. You expose them. Maybe I just want to understand you." His gaze softened, but only for a heartbeat. "You don't." He walked around the desk, stopping just in front of me. I could feel the heat radiating from him, the faint smell of smoke and rain. "You don't understand what it's like," he said softly, "to spend your whole life pretending you're made of steel, because if you break, even once, they'll eat you alive." "Then don't pretend," I whispered. He looked at me, really looked, and for the first time, the wall between us cracked, but before he could say anything, the door burst open. "Detective Hale!" an officer shouted. "We've got a situation, another body, same signature." Marcus's jaw tightened. He grabbed his coat, his professionalism snapping back like armor. He glanced at me. "You're not coming." "Like hell I'm not." He hesitated, then muttered, "Fine, stay behind me." The crime scene was under an overpass near the docks. Rain poured again, the city's way of keeping its sins clean. Floodlights painted the scene in cold blue and white. The victim lay sprawled in the mud, another ex-cop, same pattern, same precision. Marcus crouched beside the body, his expression carved from stone. I stood behind the tape, notebook in hand, pretending to be detached while my pulse raced. He looked up suddenly. "Keller, get back!" "What?" Now, before I could move, a shadow stepped out from behind one of the concrete pillars, a man in a dark coat, a gun gleaming in the rain. Everything happened fast. A shot rang out. Marcus tackled me to the ground, the bullet whistling inches above my head. We hit the mud hard, his weight knocking the breath out of me. The gunman ran. Sirens wailed. Officers scattered. Marcus cursed under his breath, pushing himself off me. "Are you hit?" I don't think so." "Good." He stood, eyes scanning the darkness. "You really don't listen, do you? Would you rather I let you get shot alone?" He almost smiled, shaking his head. "You're insane." "Maybe," I said. "But I'm alive thanks to you." He turned toward me, rain dripping down his face, his hair plastered to his forehead. His voice was low, rough. "Don't thank me. Just stay out of this." "I can't." He took a step closer. "You will." "No." Lightning flashed, lighting up the space between us. His hand shot out, grabbing my arm. Not roughly, but with a kind of desperation I'd never felt before. "You don't understand, Keller," he said. "If they find out what this is really about, if they find out about us—" "There is no us," I said, though the lie burned my throat. His grip loosened. His eyes searched mine, quiet, raw, dangerous. "Exactly," he said softly. "And that's the only reason you're still alive." He let go and walked away, barking orders to his team, leaving me in the rain, trembling, breathless, and completely ruined. Back at my apartment, I replayed everything, the shot, the touch, the look in his eyes when he said us. He'd saved my life. And then he'd walked away like it meant nothing. But I knew better, because the truth was written all over him. The way his hands shook when he thought no one was watching. The way his voice broke when he said my name. The way he looked at me, like I was the one thing he wasn't allowed to want. And that night, as thunder rolled outside my window, I realized the story I was chasing wasn't the one in the headlines. It was the one written between us. In the silence, in the danger, in every rule we were both about to break. I didn't sleep that night. The city never stopped humming outside my window. The echo of tires, sirens, and thunder mixing with the sound of my thoughts. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the flash of the gun, the rain on Marcus's face, the weight of him over me, the feel of his hand gripping my arm. He'd saved my life, and then told me there was no us, but I'd seen the truth behind his eyes. The wall was cracking, and I wasn't leaving until I understood what was behind it. The next morning, I showed up at his precinct again. He was in the parking lot, leaning against his car with a cigarette between his fingers. The first time, I'd ever seen him smoke. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, veins visible along his forearms, a small bandage on his hand where the bullet must have grazed him the night before. When he saw me, his expression tightened. "You're a slow learner, Keller." I crossed my arms. "And you're terrible at saying thank you. For what?" "For saving your ass. Again." He smirked slightly, the smallest hint of amusement quickly erased. "You should have stayed home. You'd miss me too much." That made him pause, exhale smoke through his nose, and look at me like I'd said something dangerous. "You think this is a game?" "I think you want it to be one." His jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about. Then explain it to me." He dropped the cigarette, crushing it under his boot. "Get in the car." We drove in silence for nearly 20 minutes, the city blurring into grey through the windshield. I didn't ask where we were going. I trusted him enough not to. Finally, he turned onto a narrow road that wound along the edge of the river. He parked beside an abandoned warehouse and killed the engine. "This is where the first body was found," he said quietly. The air smelled of rust and river water. The building's windows were shattered and graffiti covered the walls. He got out, motioning for me to follow. Inside, the place was dark, except for a few beams of light streaming through the holes in the roof. Dust floated in the air like falling snow. "This was a safe house," he said. "Back when I worked undercover, we used it to store evidence and sometimes people." "People," he nodded. "Witnesses, informants, anyone who got caught in the crossfire." He stopped by an old table covered in files, papers yellowed by time. "One of them was the man who ended up dead last week. I promised I'd keep him safe. I didn't." I stepped closer. "That's why this case matters to you." He didn't look at me. "It's why it's destroying me." I could hear the strain in his voice, the guilt he'd been carrying like a second skin. "You can't change the past, Marcus." He turned suddenly, his voice sharp. "Don't tell me what I can't change." I was the one who lied to him. I told him I'd protect him. I told him the badge meant something. I swallowed hard. "And what does it mean now?" He looked up at me, eyes tired. "It means I've spent half my life hiding who I am to protect a system that wouldn't protect me." The words hung in the air between us. "That's why you said it, isn't it?" I said softly. "Cops don't fall in love with men like me." His jaw tightened again, but this time he didn't look away. "Yeah," he said finally. "Because they don't get to." I stepped closer. "Then what do you call this?" His breath caught. "A mistake." "Really?" I whispered. "Because it feels a lot like the truth." He exhaled slowly, closing his eyes as if trying to steady himself. "You don't understand what it would cost me. I'm not asking you to risk your job, Marcus." He opened his eyes. "No, you're asking me to risk everything else." The tension in the air was electric, thick enough to burn. He looked at me for a long time, his hand flexing at his side as if trying to hold himself back. "Tell me to stop," he said suddenly. "I won't." "Ryan." "Don't," I said, stepping closer. "Don't call me that if you don't mean it." For a moment he didn't move. Then something in him snapped. He reached out, grabbing my collar, pulling me close until I could feel his breath against my skin. The smell of rain and smoke surrounded me, and the world outside ceased to exist. The kiss was rough, unplanned, full of everything we'd both been denying. It wasn't gentle, it was a confession, a breaking point. When he finally pulled away, his eyes were wide, his chest rising and falling fast. "That shouldn't have happened," he said, voice shaking. "Do you regret it?" He hesitated. "Yes, you're lying." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "You don't get it. If anyone finds out, if they even suspect, I lose everything. My badge, my career, my life." I stepped toward him again. "Maybe some things are worth losing." He looked up at me, pain etched into every line of his face. "Not for me, Keller. Not for me." He turned away, staring at the river through the broken window. I wanted to tell him I didn't care, that I'd fight with him, for him, against whoever we had to. But when I saw his shoulders shaking, when I realized the weight he'd been carrying wasn't just fear, but shame, I stayed quiet. He said softly, "You should go." "I can't." He turned back to me, and for the first time I saw tears in his eyes. "Please." I nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Oh, I'll go." "But you can't keep pretending you don't feel it." He didn't answer. As I walked away, I heard his voice, barely a whisper behind me. "I've been pretending my whole life, Keller. I don't know how to stop." Outside, the rain started again, steady, relentless. I stood by the car, staring at the warehouse. Inside, the man I'd fallen for was still fighting ghosts that didn't belong to him, and I realized maybe loving someone like Marcus Hale wasn't about saving him. Maybe it was about standing close enough to remind him that he was still human, even when the world told him not to be. 2 days after the warehouse, Marcus stopped returning my calls. He didn't answer texts, didn't show up at the precinct. It was as if he'd vanished into the fog that seemed to hang over this city like a curse. But I'd learned one thing about Marcus Hale. Silence wasn't absence. It was defense, so I kept digging. The corruption case he hinted at wasn't just rumor. It ran through the veins of the department like poison. I'd traced payment trails, false reports, names of men who'd been promoted after covering up internal crimes. The deeper I went, the darker it got. And at the center of it all was a man named Captain Brooks, Marcus's commanding officer. Every lead tied back to him. Every victim Marcus had lost had once reported to Brooks. When I finally found Marcus again, it wasn't at the precinct. It was at a dive bar on the east side of town, one of those places where the jukebox never works and the whiskey burns like regret. He was sitting at the end of the counter, still in his shirt and tie, badge tucked into his pocket like something he wasn't sure he still believed in. "Is this where heroes go to die?" I asked, sliding onto the stool beside him. He didn't turn. "You shouldn't be here. You keep saying that." He took a slow sip of his drink. "And you keep not listening." "I found something," I said. That made him look up. His eyes were bloodshot, tired but sharper than ever. "What did you do, Keller?" "I did my job." His voice dropped. "No, you did mine." I slid the folder across the counter. "Brooks, he's the one. He's cleaning house, the victims, the evidence, all of it. He's trying to bury you with them." Marcus's hand froze mid-air. His knuckles turned white. "You have proof?" "Enough to make noise." He exhaled slowly. "You need to destroy it." "What?" He turned fully toward me, eyes cold. "You heard me. Marcus, this could clear your name." He leaned closer, voice low. "You think the truth saves people like me? It doesn't, it kills them. Then what are you going to do? Keep pretending?" His jaw tightened. "That's what I'm good at." I shook my head. "You're not protecting anyone. You're just scared." He grabbed my wrist, not hard, but enough to make my pulse spike. "You think you know what fear is, Keller? Try living every day knowing the system you work for would destroy you if it knew who you really are." His voice cracked. The first time I'd ever heard it break. I said quietly, "Then let it destroy you for the right reason." He stared at me for a long time before standing abruptly. "I can't do this with you." "Do what?" "This," he gestured between us, whatever this is. "I can't want you and survive this job. They'd eat me alive." "Maybe they already are," I said. He flinched. Then he turned and walked out, leaving the drink half-finished and the folder unopened. That night I followed him. Not out of spite, out of instinct. He drove back to the warehouse district, parked in the shadows, and slipped inside. I stayed far enough behind to watch. Through the broken windows, I saw him meet with someone. Brooks. The captain's voice carried through the night air, low but sharp. "You were supposed to keep quiet, Hale. Now I've got journalists poking around." Marcus stood firm. "You're cleaning up your own mess. Don't make me part of it." Brooks stepped closer. "Yeah, you already are." He shoved Marcus's chest. Marcus didn't move. "Walk away, Marcus," Brooks said. "Before you end up like the others." "Is that a threat?" "No," Brooks said. "It's a promise. I didn't even think." I stepped out of the shadows. "He's not walking anywhere." Both men turned, Marcus's eyes wide with panic. "Keller, what the hell are you doing?" "Finishing what you started." I raised my phone, camera already recording. "Say hi to the truth," Brooks sneered. "You've got guts, kid. Shame you won't live long enough to post that." He reached for his gun. Marcus moved first. A struggle. A flash of metal. A single gunshot that tore through the silence. For a moment, none of us moved. Then Brooks stumbled backward, clutching his shoulder, and fell against the wall. Marcus was breathing hard, gun still shaking in his hand. "Keller," he whispered. "Go. I'm not leaving you." He turned to me, eyes filled with something I'd never seen before. Not fear, not anger, but resignation. "Please, before backup gets here. They won't believe you. They never do." Sirens wailed in the distance. I stepped closer, ignoring the blood on the floor, the chaos around us. "I'll tell them everything. I have the footage." He grabbed my face with both hands, pulling me close. "You don't understand. If they see that video, I'm done. And so are you." "I don't care." His voice broke. "I do." He kissed me, desperate, final, full of everything we hadn't said. Then he shoved me toward the door. "Go, Ryan." The last thing I saw before I ran into the night was Marcus standing over his captain, gun still in his hand, sirens closing in. By the time I reached my apartment, the news had already hit. Detective Marcus Hale suspended pending investigation. They called it an officer-involved shooting. They always do. I stared at the photo of him on the screen, the same man who once told me cops don't fall in love with men like me, and realized he already had. He just didn't know how to survive it. 3 days after the shooting, the department issued a statement calling it a justified act of defense. But anyone who knew how this city worked could read between the lines. Marcus Hale had stepped out of line, and now they were going to make an example of him. The media went feral. Every network ran the same story. Veteran detective suspended pending inquiry into police corruption and internal misconduct. They didn't need to say the rest out loud. The insinuations bled through every headline. Reckless, unstable, dangerous. I knew he was being set up. And I knew I was next. The morning after the story broke, my editor called. "Ryan, whatever you're digging into with Hale, drop it. They're coming after anyone connected to him." I stared out my apartment window at the grey sky. "He's not the villain they're painting him to be." "Then let someone else prove it," she said softly. "You've done enough damage already." But I hadn't done enough. Not even close, because while the city tore him apart in headlines, Marcus was sitting in an interrogation room alone, answering to people who'd already decided his guilt. By noon, I was at the precinct. The clerk at the front desk didn't even look up when I asked to see him. "Detective Hale's unavailable." Unavailable or forbidden? Both. I slipped my press ID across the counter. "Then tell whoever's in charge that the journalist they're trying to silence already has the video." That got their attention. Within minutes, I was being escorted through the metal detectors and down a hallway that smelled like bleach and cheap coffee. Marcus sat behind a glass window, cuffed to the table, looking like the ghost of himself. His suit was wrinkled, jaw unshaven, eyes hollow. When he saw me, something flickered. Relief, regret, maybe both. The officer beside him frowned. "He doesn't get visitors." "He does now," I said, flashing the press badge again. The officer sighed. 5 minutes. When the door closed behind me, Marcus didn't look up. "You shouldn't be here, Keller." I could say the same. He smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You have a death wish, or you just really like lost causes?" I like the truth. I sat across from him. "And you?" That made him flinch. He said quietly, "You have no idea what you've walked into." "I think I do. You're being framed for trying to stop the same corruption that killed your men." He looked up sharply. "You don't say that here." "Then tell me where I can say it," I shot back. His gaze softened, tired and tender all at once. "Ryan, you need to let me go." "No," he leaned forward. "I'm serious. Internal Affairs is crawling all over this. If they find out you were there that night, they already know," I interrupted. "They showed up at my apartment this morning. Asked questions about you. About us." His eyes widened. "What did you tell them?" "The truth." He swore under his breath, hands clenching into fists. "You should have lied. Marcus, lying is what got you here. For the first time since I walked in, he met my eyes fully. There was no wall left, just exhaustion and something that looked a lot like love." He said softly, "You think you're saving me, but you're not. You're just giving them another weapon to use." Then let them, I whispered. I'm done being scared, he laughed bitterly. You sound like me before I joined the force. Maybe you should remember that man, I said. He stared at me for a long time before saying quietly, they're going to take my badge, but they can't take my silence. Promise me you won't publish that video, not until you're safe. Promise me, I hesitated. I promise. He nodded once, then leaned back, the faintest hint of peace crossing his face. But peace doesn't last long in this city. That night, my phone rang at 2 a.m. Ryan Keller. A voice said, yes, this is Captain Brooks's attorney. I suggest you watch the morning news before deciding what story you want to die on. The line went dead. I turned on the TV, and my blood froze. Breaking news. Confidential department files leak. Detective Marcus Hale. Implicated in cover-up. They'd beaten me to it. The evidence had been doctored, twisted, and released to make him look guilty. By sunrise, every anchor in the country was saying his name like a curse. At 8 a.m., I was outside his apartment building. The door was ajar. Inside, the place was dark. Half-empty whiskey bottle on the counter. Badge lying face down beside his gun. He sat on the couch, staring at the window. Marcus, I said softly. He didn't turn. They took everything. I know. They're calling me a murderer. You're not. He looked up then, eyes wet, voice breaking. Then why does it feel like they're right? I crossed the room and knelt in front of him. Because you've been fighting alone too long. He shook his head. You don't get it. The badge was the only thing keeping me alive. And now, it's not the badge keeping you alive, I said. It's you. He gave a small, broken laugh. You really believe that? Yes, I reached for his hand. He didn't pull away this time. His fingers were cold. I used to think love made men weak, he said quietly. But you make me remember I'm still human. Then hold on to that, I whispered. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Just the sound of rain hitting the window again. The same rain that always seemed to follow us. He squeezed my hand once before letting go. When this is over, you'll have to write it. I'll write it the way it deserves, he nodded, eyes lowering. Then make sure it ends better than this. The next morning, Marcus turned himself in. Not because he was guilty, but because he refused to let the city destroy anyone else for his mistakes. And as they led him through the courthouse in handcuffs, past flashing cameras and shouting reporters, he looked up once, just once, and found me standing in the crowd. Our eyes met, and though he didn't say a word, I heard it anyway. Don't forget me. The courtroom smelled like old wood, rain-soaked coats and tension. Cameras lined the back wall, journalists filled every bench, and the air buzzed with whispers. Everyone wanted to see the fall of Detective Marcus Hale, the cop who'd once been called untouchable. I sat near the back, my notebook open, though I wasn't writing. My pen hovered above the page, useless. I wasn't here as a journalist anymore. I was here because I couldn't stay away. Marcus stood at the defense table, his suit pressed but his face hollow. The light caught the bruise on his jaw, the one he didn't bother to hide. He looked like a man already serving a sentence no one else could see. When the judge entered, everyone rose. My legs felt heavy, like I was standing in wet cement. The charges were read: obstruction of justice, tampering with evidence, excessive use of force. Each word hit like a bullet, and Marcus didn't flinch once. I watched his hands, still, clasped together, the same hands that once pulled me from gunfire. The same hands that had touched me like I was the only thing in his world worth saving. When the prosecutor began his argument, I felt the bile rise in my throat. Every lie, every distortion, every word designed to erase the man I knew. They painted him as a monster in uniform, a relic of violence and corruption. I wanted to stand up and scream. That's not him. You're wrong. He's the only one who tried to do the right thing, but I didn't. Because the truth wasn't in the courtroom anymore. It was in my hands. 2 days before the trial, I'd made a choice. I'd kept my promise not to release the video, but I didn't promise I'd stay silent forever. What I hadn't told Marcus was that I'd been collecting my own evidence. Interviews, Testimonies, copies of internal memos, statements from the families of the victims. And one night, as the city slept, I finished writing the story, not about the scandal, not about the corruption, but about him, about the man who loved the truth more than safety, the man who saved lives while the system destroyed them, the man who taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's loving someone enough to lose everything. I published it the morning of the trial. The article went live at 6 a.m. By 9, it had gone viral. The world finally saw what I saw, not a corrupt cop, but a man crucified by a system too afraid of what his honesty would expose. By the time I walked into the courthouse, half the crowd was already whispering his name differently. Midway through the hearing, the prosecutor called me to the stand. The moment my name echoed through the room, Marcus turned his head, eyes wide. I could almost hear him thinking, "What the hell are you doing here?" I stood anyway. My legs shook as I walked to the witness box. The oath felt heavy on my tongue. "State your name, Ryan Keller. You're a journalist, correct?" I was. "Mr. Keller," the prosecutor said, pacing slowly, "you published an article this morning accusing this department, and specifically Captain Brooks, of falsifying evidence." "Yes." He held up a printed copy. "And you admit you were in a personal relationship with the defendant?" The room went silent. I looked at Marcus. His eyes begged me not to answer, but the truth had waited long enough. "Yes," I said. The prosecutor smiled like a man smelling blood. "So we can agree your testimony today is biased?" "No," I said softly. "It's honest. Something this department has forgotten how to be." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The judge slammed his gavel. "Mr. Keller, watch your tone." I nodded. "Apologies, Your Honor, but people are dying because men like Marcus Hale are punished for doing what's right. If telling the truth makes me biased, then maybe we all should be." The prosecutor started to speak again, but the room had already shifted. The energy changed. People were listening. I looked at Marcus one last time. He didn't cover up a crime. He tried to stop one, and I have the evidence to prove it. The chaos that followed was pure noise. The gavel, the shouts, the reporters scrambling for quotes. But all I saw was Marcus, head bowed, tears streaking silently down his face. The trial was postponed within the hour. Internal Affairs seized the files. Brooks was taken into custody that same night. Justice, if that's what it could be called, moved fast. Too fast. When I finally found Marcus outside the courthouse, the sky was breaking open with rain again. He stood under the overhang, coat draped over his shoulders, hair damp. "I'm searching for something." "You shouldn't have done that," he said quietly. "I couldn't let them destroy you. You already did." The words cut deep. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You took away the only thing I had left. Control. I gave you your life back," I said. He shook his head. "You gave me a story I'll never escape." Lightning flashed behind him, turning his face into something raw and unguarded. "You wrote the truth," I said softly. "That's all you ever wanted." He closed his eyes. "And now the truth owns me." I reached out, but he stepped back. "They'll reinstate me," he said, voice hollow. "Put me on a desk, maybe. I'll live. But what we had, and that dies here." Marcus, he met my eyes. "You were the best thing that happened to me, Keller. And the worst." The rain came harder. I didn't move. "Neither did he. I love you," I said finally. He smiled, sad and small. "That's the problem." Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the rain the same way he'd come into my life, quietly, painfully, beautifully. Weeks later, I got a letter. No return address. Just my name. Inside was his badge, polished, cold, and a single note. "I'm done pretending. You were right. Some truths are worth losing everything for. Don't stop writing." I held it until my hands shook. He hadn't said goodbye this time. He didn't have to, because some endings aren't meant to close. They're meant to echo. Some loves are born in silence and end in fire. And maybe that's what makes them unforgettable. If this story touched you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because sometimes The most dangerous love stories are the ones that tell the truth.